This afternoon, I've got a couple of jobs on. I have a few things to plant in the veggie garden, and we'll go and do that shortly. Also, I'll show you how things are progressing there. But first, I want to take you through this gate and show you what I'm doing there. I've got a project that has been underway for a few weeks. It still has quite a bit of work to do. Basically, it's opening up a new area of the garden. So the job right now is to go and erect a couple of gates. Now, what's on this side of the fence is pretty radically different to the other side, because this has been an area that's essentially been a clear zone next to the forest and the fence, which the wallabies and possums wander through and eat everything. But as I showed you some months ago, before winter, I cleared this back a little bit so that there was more space here. Very early in the spring, I managed to come in with the tractor. I had a small window where it just got dry enough and do some ripping. I ripped it lengthwise first, and then I came again and ripped it diagonally to try and break up this heavy clay soil. In doing so, I actually found quite a few rocks, especially in one area, and now I have a pile of those rocks that I can use in other projects. Since then, it has rained a lot. I did find another opportunity to come back and go through with the rotary hoe. But as you can see, there is a lot of clay here, and there's still a lot of clods around that haven't really broken up. It's really quite wet now because we've been getting a lot of rain, and it's too wet to work right now, but a couple more days, if it dries out, I might be able to come back and rotary hoe again. Essentially, as you can see, I've been working on getting the fence up. Now, what am I going to do here? Up this end, my first mission is to put some kiwi fruit in. Now, I have 4 kiwi fruit plants that I have purchased that are in pots and are desperately waiting to go into the ground, and that's why I'm trying to accelerate this project and get it happening. So my intention is to put them up this end. I will have some other space in this area that I will probably plant something else. I'm not 100% certain what it will be yet. I'm considering maybe some hazelnut trees, but I haven't made a firm decision on that yet. But this end I intend to use for growing some crops. Now, what they will be will probably vary. It's an area where I could grow a considerable amount of potatoes, broad beans, or other dried beans. I also could experiment with growing potentially some grains. Not that this area would contribute significantly in quantity to our diet, but it would be an interesting experiment and I would enjoy doing that. But the number one mission is to get this fence complete so that I can keep the possums and the wallabies out. Until I do that, I can't get those kiwi fruit in because they would get eaten, completely wiped out really fast. So to that end, I've come up here to put this gate on. Now, I've built these timber gates before and found them really quite good for low use gates. It's not really the strength of the timber that holds it together, but it's when you put the corrugated iron on it that actually it delivers some strength. So they're ready just to screw on. Now, this particular one is of a width where I can actually come through with the tractor if I wanted to. I've done that so that if I find it necessary, I can actually come in here and bring the tractor in to either rip the ground again or just to bring in fertilizer or whatever it may be. Just leaving that possibility open. Sometimes it's also a case that you have material like prunings and so on that you want to get out, and having a wide entrance is really useful. Up this end, I have to remove a little bit of soil to achieve the angle that I need, and I will have to remove a lot more when I actually get to the stage where the gate is coming through and starting to swing. This post is pretty loose. Basically the ground is so soft at the moment, it's really hard to ram it to a degree that's going to be tight enough. When the soil dries out a little bit, I will come back and re-ram. So with this gate, it's a similar story. Now, this gate is just the entrance gate for walking through for people. As I said earlier, I might want to take prunings out, so I've made it fairly wide. Also, because it's going to open in, the width of the gate will narrow it a little bit, so it doesn't hurt to be nice and wide. And doing it this way, I can achieve whatever it is I want. So I simply need some supports. Might have to move that one a little bit. The ground is so soft, despite the fact that these fence posts have been rammed. We've had so much rain that they're still able to be moved around, and it makes it a little bit difficult. But we'll get them lined up. We'll just move this one a fraction. So my goal here is essentially to line the outside of this up with the rails. So the iron will come and overlap the iron on this, and this will close up against it. And it should be sealed really tight. When you're opening out, as the other gate did, you end up with a crack which something potentially could climb up. But this way, with overlaps each side, it should fit in perfectly. And that's why I really want the gate in now, so that I can actually put the iron and make it work to this gate. Now up this end, I've put a latch on. I've gone out and put stainless steel in there. I really have had such an issue with galvanized ones, or the really cheap ones, still rusting. So with this, I prefer to just put the stainless steel in and do it once. Now it's closing into the post, so that'll keep it closed, and so when I put the iron over, it'll be much easier to work with it fixed together. That's those couple of jobs done. So let's go and have a look at the veggie garden. Now there really is such a contrast between what's on the outside of this gate and what's on the inside. And realistically, what that is the difference that you make when you keep the wildlife out, when there's no possums and wallabies, rabbits, etc. coming into the garden. Outside they eat everything, but in here you can actually create a garden that you want. Well, that was 2 weeks ago, but unfortunately the audio from that film didn't work, and in between there's been several things that have interfered with my ability to come back and finish it up. So what I'd like to do today is to not only show you what I did 2 weeks ago in the veggie garden, but also update you as to what's happening right now. The first job that I did in the veggie garden was to hill the potatoes. Now, this is the summer crop of potatoes, and this was the first hilling that I had done. Hilling the potatoes is not only an essential part of the crop in creating the crop and covering the potatoes, because I plant them fairly deep, but it's also useful in terms of weed control. Now, 2 weeks later, I've actually been back and hilled them a second time. And as you can see, they're continuing to grow really, really well. It won't be very long now before they get big enough to actually get coverage like this crop here, which is the spring crop, did, and that suppresses most of the weeds. This spring crop is really close to the point where I can harvest it. Probably within the next week or so I will begin to dig. The second job that I did was to deal with some issues with the brassicas. Now, because it's been wet, there's been a lot of slug and snail problems, so I put some extra bait around. I also planted out a couple of cabbage plants that I had there from plugs and put those in. What we generally use for slug and snail problems is a elemental iron bait, the one that is pet safe, and we feel reasonably safe using that in the veggie garden, and it seems reasonably successful as well. It's quite good if you can get to it early and put it around where they tend to congregate, where they're hiding, and they will feed on it and it will do the job in keeping the numbers down. Now, since then I have been back and netted these brassicas. They are growing quite well and really well underway. I also have planted another bed of brassicas to succeed this, again combining kale, broccoli and cabbage, but the seeds are only just coming through right now. Also, because, as I said, the slugs and snails have been so bad, I've had trouble getting the beans underway. And so I had to come and not only put some more slug and snail bait around, I also needed to replant with beans seed as well. And only now are they beginning to come through, and they don't look as if they've been attacked again. As it's dried out, there's less problems. Another job that I did 2 weeks ago was to come and plant a general progressive bed like the first one that I had planted the month earlier. It's mixed with silver beet, carrots, beetroot, etc. Now, the silver beet, I was actually able to go and find volunteer plants elsewhere in the garden and put those in, and that makes a head start, and they are doing quite well now. They've got underway. The previous bed, as you can see, is really doing well. We've got radish going to seed because we just don't eat enough of it, but the silver beet's up to a stage now that we can pick it. Beetroot's not quite ready yet. The carrots were a real disaster. I planted them twice. They kept coming up okay, but it was the slugs really, or snails, that just got in there and would wipe them out every time. There's a few survived, but this next lot that I've planted in this bed is looking like it will actually make the grade and give us some significant carrots. These snow peas, which were planted during winter, are now coming to full crop, and they need to be picked every 2 days at least to keep them going. There's a batch there that need to be picked right now. I'll shortly come back with a bowl and pick those, and they're going to give us snow peas for quite a few weeks, and that's really nice at this stage when there still isn't a lot coming from the garden to get something fresh like this. Well, that's all the jobs that I actually did in the veggie garden a couple of weeks ago, but I thought I'd bring you and show you what's happening in this section. As you can see, the onions and beetroot that were planted very early in spring are doing really well. They've loved the rain that we've had. Also, the broad beans, of course, are going fantastic, as they pretty much always do this time of the year, being probably the most reliable crop that you can grow in Tasmania. And it's not very far away from giving us some beans. The sweet corn here is starting to get underway. I always notice how sweet corn, when it first comes through, it tends to sit and not do very much. And for a couple of weeks you sort of think, is it going to grow? But then it starts to really leap out of the ground, and it's beginning to do that. The roots are getting down and it'll be away. It looks like the germination is quite acceptable. There's a few little patches, but I think it'll give us a good big crop of sweet corn. Now, the tomatoes are doing quite well, and they're actually showing some flower now, starting to branch and grow. Again, they sat for a little while. Of course, they go through some transplant shock, and November weather here in Tasmania can be pretty unpredictable. If that's one thing predictable about November, it's that it's unpredictable. It can be hot, it can be cold, and that really doesn't do a lot of good for growing tomatoes. It holds them back a bit, particularly the cold weather. Also, we still had some very, very wet weather. But now it is beginning to dry out a little bit. It's getting warmer. It's been dry for probably a week or so. We've got some more rain probably coming tonight or tomorrow. It looks like there's a storm brewing, and that will be good for them. I think they'll get underway. I was thinking though that they're not doing as well as they normally would, and I suddenly remembered that there's one thing that I haven't done with these tomatoes, and that's to actually give them any of the meat and bone meal that I normally would give them. Because I didn't cultivate the soil and planted directly into the soil through the mulch that was already here, I didn't put it in at that time, and I intended to come back and add some, and I've forgotten to do that. So that's a job that I'm going to be doing in the next day or so, is to come back and give them a dose of the meat and bone meal. I might see if I can get it done before we have that rain so that it actually washes in. As you can see, the Three Sisters patch is off to a good start. The corn and the beans are really underway. They came out really fast. They were out of the ground. I think the corn came out in just 1 week. So really nice quick start. Some of the pumpkins haven't come through so well, and so I have done a little bit of replanting there. Not entirely sure yet whether that's necessary, because a few more are still coming through, but so far this patch is looking really good. Now, I pretty much abandoned the scarlet runner beans as being a failure, because the first year that I actually grew them, they didn't come back again. But having pulled the trellis out, this year they've actually decided to come back. And you can see some runners here starting to go up. So because I saw them coming through, I put these stakes against the fence, lead them up and let them run around. We'll see how they go. If there's something comes from them, it's a bonus. If not, I'm really not worried. Now, as it's a fortnight since I actually started this film and showed you what I was doing with the other project, we'll just go back very quickly and I'll show you what has happened in those 2 weeks. Well, as you can see, I have made some progress in getting the iron up on this fence. Over the last 2 weeks, I've only found 3 days, individual days, where I was able to come and work on getting this iron up. And it's pretty slow working with the motley collection of old iron that I have here. But it is progressing, and I'm not far from completion now. There's probably only another half a day of actual fencing that I need to do, and then I'll be able to get in and plant those kiwi fruit that desperately need to go into the soil. But that's for another day and for another video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with that soon.